When we talk about addiction, it's so easy to get caught up in ideas about willpower or morality or character. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? Today, we're going to dive deep into the science because it turns out addiction isn't some kind of character flaw. It's a disease of our most important organ, the brain.
Okay, let's just start with this because it really gets to the heart of everything. This isn't about someone just chasing a good time. No. This is about the most basic, fundamental part of us, the part that tells us to eat, to drink, to connect, to stay alive, getting corrupted. This system designed to keep us going literally gets hijacked.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the brain's built-in survival switch. Then we'll jump on the wild dopamine roller coaster to see how the chemistry works. After that, we'll get into the 3 big triggers that put some people more at risk, why the teenage brain is in a really vulnerable spot, and we'll wrap up by looking at the clash between stigma and actual science. All right, let's start at ground zero. We're talking about the most ancient, elemental part of our brain. This isn't the part that's doing your taxes or writing poetry. Nope. This is the part that has kept our species alive for hundreds of thousands of years. It's called the reward circuit. You can basically think of it as the brain's internal, hey, that was awesome, do it again system. It's what pushed our ancestors to find food, to find water, to find a partner. It rewards those life-sustaining things with a little burst of a feel-good chemical. And this right here is where the whole problem starts, because this is the very system that addiction takes over. So let's talk about that feel-good chemical, dopamine. Our brains, they're these incredibly fine-tuned instruments. They're designed to stay in a really delicate chemical balance. But addictive substances, they don't just nudge that balance. They throw it into absolute chaos.
Okay, so on any given day, your brain is just kind of humming along with about 100 units of dopamine. That's your baseline. It's what makes you feel normal, engaged, ready to go. It's basically the biological signal for everything's cool. Now, let's say you do something that's actually good for survival, like you have a great meal or you have sex. Your brain goes, yes, that's what I'm talking about, and gives you a reward. Dopamine might spike up to 200 units. It feels great. And then, importantly, everything just goes right back to normal. That's the system working perfectly. But then, something like cocaine gets introduced. It doesn't just nudge the system, it floods it, spiking dopamine all the way up to 350 units. That is way, way outside the brain's normal comfort zone. The feeling is intense and it's totally unnatural. And then you have something like meth. And this is it's completely off the charts. We're talking over 1,300 units of dopamine. That's not a reward anymore. That is a chemical tidal wave that the human brain in 200,000 years of evolution was never, ever built to handle.
So what does the brain do? It panics. Its survival instinct kicks in, and it basically says, whoa, something is seriously broken here. And it starts to desperately try and turn the volume down. It starts getting rid of dopamine receptors. It slows down its own production. It's an emergency shutdown. And this is the devastating result. This is what a broken brain looks like. That old normal baseline of 100, it's gone. The new normal might be down at 40. And at 40, you don't just feel kind of down, you feel miserable. Anxious, lifeless. Your brain is basically screaming at you that you are not okay. And here's the most important part. The drive to use again isn't about getting high anymore. It's a desperate, frantic attempt to just feel normal again. Okay, so this process can literally change anyone's brain. But you might be wondering, why does it seem to grab hold of some people so much more tightly than others? Well, the science points to a powerful combination of 3 big risk factors. So what is it that makes one person more vulnerable than the next? It is not about being weak or having no willpower. The real answer lies in a mix of our biology, our environment, and frankly, just timing. So let's break it down. There are 3 big ones: the genes you're born with, how early you're exposed to a substance, and whether you experience significant trauma as a child. You can think of these as layers of risk, and they can really stack up.
First up, genetics. And the numbers here are they're astounding. If a parent or grandparent struggled with addiction, your personal risk is about 50%. Think about that. That makes addiction one of the most heritable diseases in all of medicine, right up there with things like heart disease. But, and this is a huge but, your genes are not your destiny. Not even close.
You actually have an incredible amount of power to change that genetic risk. And the number one tool for doing it is shockingly simple. Just wait. Delay the first time you use a substance. And just look at these numbers. It's staggering. So you have that 50% genetic risk factor hanging over your head. But if you can just wait until your brain is fully developed, we're talking around age 24, before you ever use a substance, your risk plummets. It goes from 50% all the way down to 5%. That's a 90% reduction in your genetic risk just by waiting for your brain to finish building itself. And that is exactly why this conversation has to focus on the teen years. It's not just a phase of making bad decisions, it's a critical period of brain construction, and that makes it a uniquely vulnerable time. See, between the ages of about 12 and 24, your brain is going through this massive renovation. It's trying to become more efficient, so it prunes away connections it doesn't need. It's a really delicate process, like surgery that requires a scalpel. But a substance like THC, the main ingredient in marijuana, is actually neurotoxic to a developing brain. It doesn't act like a scalpel. It acts like a sledgehammer, just smashing through this really important construction site. And the long-term effects of that, they're really stark. When you compare people who didn't use marijuana heavily as teens to those who did, their lives look totally different by age 25. 36% of non-users graduate from college. For heavy teen users, just 2%. And look at unemployment. More than half of heavy teen users are unemployed. It's what experts call a failure to launch, and it's fueled by a drug that degrades performance. So if we know all of this, that it's a brain disease, that it's tied to genetics, that it's all about adolescent exposure, why on earth do we still treat it like it's some kind of moral failing? This last story really drives home the deadly impact of that stigma. I want you to picture two neighbors. One is a 68-year-old man, smoker, heavy drinker, terrible diet. His neighbor is a 24-year-old woman, a former athlete who got hooked on opioids after an injury, and she's 9 months sober. One morning, both of them have a major medical crisis. The man has a massive heart attack, brought on almost entirely by his lifestyle choices. He gets a $250,000 surgery, months of cardiac rehab, and tons of compassion. Nobody shames him. The young woman relapses and overdoses. She's revived with Narcan, she's shamed by the first responders, made to feel like a piece of dirt, and then she's just sent home. Both have a chronic disease. Only one of them is treated like a person who deserves to be cared for. And that's what it all comes down to, right? We have the science. We know that addiction is a preventable, treatable, chronic disease of the brain. The only question left is, when are we as a society going to let our compassion and our medical system finally catch up to what the science has been telling us all along?